My stepbrother tried to sabotage my wedding by booking the same venue and copying my theme. My guardians chose to stand by him, but when they saw me on the news, they rushed to my house only to find that I had already moved on, in a way they never expected. I, 32M, never thought my wedding day would become the catalyst for the most satisfying revenge of my life, but here we are. My stepbrother has always been the golden child. When our parents married 12 years ago, he was already established as the family favorite, charming, manipulative, and somehow always managing to make me look like the problem. My guardians, who raised me after my biological parents died, seemed to forget I existed the moment they welcomed him into their lives. The engagement announcement should have been a happy moment. My fiancée and I had been together for 4 years, and we'd finally decided to take the plunge. We'd saved up for months to book the Riverside Manor, a stunning venue overlooking the lake, and spent weeks planning every detail of our autumn-themed celebration. The burgundy and gold color scheme, the rustic decorations, the seasonal menu, everything was perfect. That's when my stepbrother decided to get engaged too. Coincidentally, just 2 weeks after our announcement. Even more coincidentally, he'd somehow managed to book the exact same venue for the weekend before our wedding. When I confronted him about it, he just shrugged and said great minds think alike. My guardians laughed it off, saying it was sweet that both their boys had such similar taste. The similarities didn't end there. Somehow, he'd managed to replicate our entire theme. The burgundy and gold colors, the autumn decorations, even the same caterer. When photos from his engagement party started circulating, I felt sick. It was like looking at a preview of my own wedding, except everything felt cheapened and stolen. I tried talking to my guardians about it. They brushed off my concerns, telling me I was being dramatic and that there was room for both of us to have beautiful weddings. When I pointed out the obvious copying, they suggested maybe we could coordinate our themes to avoid any awkwardness. The audacity was breathtaking. The final straw came when I discovered he'd somehow convinced our shared wedding planner to give him access to all our vendor contacts and detailed plans. The woman had the nerve to tell me she thought we were planning together as a family. My stepbrother had apparently told her we wanted to create a cohesive family celebration across both weekends. That's when I made my decision. If they wanted to play games, I'd play to win. I quietly canceled everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the flowers, everything. I told each vendor there had been a family emergency and we needed to postpone indefinitely. Most were understanding, especially when I mentioned keeping their deposits as compensation for the short notice. Then I called my fiancée and explained my plan. She was hesitant at first, worried about the cost and the drama, but when I showed her the side-by-side photos of our stolen theme, she was on board. We had 3 weeks to pull off something incredible. I reached out to my college roommate, who'd moved to California and made it big in tech. He'd always told me if I ever needed anything, just ask. Well, I was asking. Within 48 hours, he'd connected me with an event planner in Napa Valley who specialized in last-minute luxury weddings. Money wasn't an object. He insisted on covering everything as his wedding gift to us. The new wedding was going to be intimate, elegant, and completely different from anything my stepbrother could have imagined. A vineyard ceremony at sunset, followed by dinner under the stars. Only our closest friends and the family members who actually mattered would be invited. My guardians and stepbrother were notably absent from the guest list. Meanwhile, I watched from a distance as my stepbrother's wedding weekend approached. He'd been bragging to everyone about his elaborate celebration, posting constant updates on social media about the preparations. My guardians were over the moon, helping with every detail and posting their own excited updates about their son's big day. The weekend arrived, and I was 3,000 miles away, getting ready for my own ceremony. My phone was buzzing constantly with messages, but I'd turned off notifications. Whatever drama was unfolding back home could wait. Our wedding was perfect. The ceremony took place as the sun set over the rolling hills, casting everything in golden light. Our small group of guests felt more like family than my actual family ever had. The photographer captured every moment beautifully, and by the end of the night, we had dozens of stunning photos that looked like they belonged in a magazine. That's when my college roommate surprised us with his final gift. He'd been documenting the entire weekend with a professional videographer, and he'd already submitted our story to several lifestyle and wedding publications. Within hours of the ceremony ending, We were featured on 3 major wedding blogs and a lifestyle magazine's Instagram account. The story was irresistible to them. Young couple overcomes family drama to create dream wedding in Napa Valley. The photos were stunning, the story was compelling, and the whole thing went viral overnight. By Monday morning, we were trending on social media, and a major morning show had reached out about featuring our story. I finally turned my phone back on during our honeymoon in Tuscany. The messages were overwhelming. My guardians had called and texted dozens of times, starting with anger about my no-show at the family wedding, then confusion about where I was, then panic when they saw the news coverage. My stepbrother's wedding had apparently been a disaster. Without access to our original vendors, who were now unavailable due to my cancellations, he'd been forced to scramble for replacements. The backup caterer had food poisoning issues, the photographer was a no-show, and the decorations looked cheap and hastily assembled. The whole thing was a far cry from the elegant celebration he'd been promising everyone. But the real kicker was the timing. His wedding disaster was happening at the exact same time our fairy tale wedding was being broadcast to millions of people. The contrast was stark and public. The morning show interview aired while we were still in Italy. They'd put together a beautiful segment about our love story, complete with the stunning wedding footage and photos. The host asked about overcoming family obstacles, and I gave a diplomatic answer about choosing to surround ourselves with people who truly supported our happiness. When we returned home, we found my guardians waiting on our doorstep. They looked haggard and desperate, clutching printouts of news articles about our wedding. They wanted to know why we hadn't told them, why they weren't invited, why we'd kept such a big secret. I invited them in and served coffee in our new home, a beautiful house my wife and I had purchased in a different state, using the signing bonus from my new job. That was another surprise they weren't expecting. While they'd been focused on my stepbrother's drama, I'd been quietly building a life that didn't revolve around their approval. They tried to explain their side, talking about family unity and not wanting to take sides. They insisted they'd always loved me equally and couldn't understand why I felt excluded. When I showed them the side-by-side photos of the stolen wedding theme, they fell silent. My guardian finally asked what I wanted from them, what it would take to fix our relationship. I told them the truth. I didn't want anything from them anymore. I'd spent years trying to earn their approval and recognition, competing with a stepbrother who seemed to effortlessly command their attention and support. But I'd finally realized I didn't need their validation to be happy. The conversation was civil but final. They left understanding that while I didn't hate them, I also didn't need them in my life anymore. I'd found my own family in my wife, my friends, and the people who'd supported us when it mattered. Update 1. 6 months later, my stepbrother reached out directly. His marriage was already struggling, apparently. The wedding disaster had been an omen of things to come. His wife had discovered that most of their relationship milestones had been copied from other people, including ours. She'd started questioning whether anything about their relationship was authentic. He wanted to apologize and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about what he had to say. He looked different, tired and less confident than I'd ever seen him. He admitted he'd always felt threatened by me, worried that our parents loved me more because I was their first choice, not someone they'd inherited through marriage. The irony was thick. While I'd spent years feeling like the outsider, he'd been insecure about his place in the family too. His copying behavior had been his way of trying to prove he deserved the same things I had. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained it. I told him I appreciated the apology, but that ship had sailed. The damage wasn't just about the wedding. It was about years of feeling diminished and overlooked while he was celebrated for mediocrity. I wished him well, but made it clear that we wouldn't be rebuilding our relationship. Update 2. A year after our wedding, the lifestyle magazine that had first featured our story reached out again. They were doing a follow-up piece about couples who'd overcome adversity to build strong marriages. They wanted to feature us as an example of how cutting toxic family ties can actually strengthen your chosen family. The article came out beautifully, focusing on our new life and the community we'd built in our new city. We'd made genuine friends, gotten involved in local charities, and created the kind of supportive network I'd always wanted. My wife had started her own business, and I'd been promoted twice at my new company. My guardians saw the article, of course. They reached out again, this time through my wife's social media, asking if we could try family therapy. They'd apparently been going to counseling themselves, trying to understand where they'd gone wrong with me. It was too little, Too late, but I appreciated that they were at least trying to grow. I sent them a polite message explaining that I was happy with my life as it was. I didn't need closure or reconciliation. I'd already moved on. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply building a life so fulfilling that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. Update 3. 2 years post-wedding, I received an unexpected call. My stepbrother was getting divorced, and apparently, his ex-wife had mentioned our story during their mediation. She'd used our wedding as an example of authentic planning versus his pattern of copying others. The divorce proceedings had gotten ugly, with her documenting his history of plagiarizing everything from business presentations to social media posts. He was calling to ask if I'd be willing to speak to his therapist about our family dynamics. His counselor thought understanding our relationship might help him break his pattern of competitive behavior. I declined politely, but wished him luck with his healing process. The strangest part was that I felt genuinely sorry for him. His need to copy and compete had cost him his marriage, his relationship with our parents, and apparently several friendships and professional opportunities. What had started as sibling rivalry had become a destructive pattern that was ruining his life. Meanwhile, my wife and I were thriving. We bought a larger house, adopted 2 rescue dogs, and were planning to start a family. Our friend group had expanded to include other couples who'd chosen authenticity over family obligation. We hosted regular dinner parties and game nights, creating the kind of warm, supportive environment I'd always craved. The wedding that had started as an act of rebellion had become the foundation for everything good in my life. By refusing to accept being diminished and choosing to build something beautiful instead, I'd accidentally created the exact life I'd always wanted. My guardians still sent birthday cards and holiday greetings, which I acknowledged politely but briefly. They'd learned to respect my boundaries, even if they didn't fully understand them. My stepbrother had moved across the country for a fresh start, and we had no contact beyond the occasional mutual social media connection. The best part was that none of it felt like unfinished business anymore. I wasn't angry or resentful. I was simply content with the choices I'd made. The people who mattered were in my life, and the people who didn't matter were not. It was exactly as it should be. Looking back, I'm grateful for that stolen wedding theme. It forced me to stop accepting scraps of attention and approval from people who would never truly value me. Instead, I built something real with people who chose to be there, and that made all the difference.